The girl hadn't spoken in 72 days. Her name was Emily, and she was 7 years old. She had once been the kind of child who talked to flowers, who gave names to shadows and sang to the moon, but that was before the accident, before the fire, before the screaming, before the silence that came after. Now, Emily and her father lived in an old farmhouse miles away from everything. No neighbors, no city sounds, just wind, trees, and the echo of things left unsaid. She didn't speak, didn't cry, didn't look anyone in the eye, not even her dad. She wandered the edge of the woods like a ghost, shoes always muddy, pockets full of feathers, stones, pieces of broken things she never explained. One morning, she didn't come back. Her father searched for hours, called her name until his voice cracked, ran through the forest with panic in his chest and guilt in his lungs. And then he found her, sitting in a clearing, alone, except she wasn't. Lying beside her, calm as twilight, was a dog. A large, yellow-eyed German shepherd, fur tangled, limbs lean, scars along his side like forgotten maps, no collar, no tag. The dog didn't growl, didn't move. He just looked at Emily, and Emily looked at him. She rested her hand gently on his back. Her father stood frozen at the edge of the clearing, afraid to break the moment. Then, for the first time in over 2 months, Emily whispered one word: stay. Before the fire, Emily lived in a small apartment with her mom and dad. They didn't have much, but they had each other, bedtime stories, spilled pancake batter, laughter that echoed off the walls like music. Her mom was a painter. She used to let Emily mix colors with her fingers. They painted sunsets on cardboard and stars on the ceiling above her bed. Then came the night that changed everything. No one knows exactly how the fire started. A faulty wire, a candle left burning. One small spark that took too much. Emily survived. Her mother didn't. The firefighters found Emily in the closet, arms wrapped around a stuffed giraffe, face streaked with ash, eyes wide and silent. She didn't scream, didn't cry, just stared. Since that night, she hadn't said a word. Her father, Daniel, did what he thought was best. He left the city, bought an old farmhouse surrounded by trees and space. He hoped the quiet would heal her, but the silence only grew deeper. Emily didn't play, didn't draw, didn't speak. Daniel tried everything: therapists, journals, walks through the woods. She followed, but like a shadow, not present, not reachable. Until the day she disappeared into the forest and returned with a dog. No one knew where he came from. There were no missing dog reports, no owners looking. He didn't bark, didn't beg, just followed Emily wherever she went. She named him Shadow. Daniel had never seen her name anything since the fire. She didn't explain why, didn't need to. Because sometimes the soul recognizes something long before the mind understands it. Shadow didn't act like a regular dog. He didn't bark at deer or chase squirrels, didn't whimper for food or whine to be let out. He simply followed Emily like he'd always been there, like he belonged. Emily didn't speak to him, not out loud. But something passed between them, something deeper than words. She walked the edge of the trees. He walked beside her. She sat under the same pine every afternoon. He laid down at her feet. She'd sometimes reach out and tangle her fingers in the thick fur behind his ears. He never moved. Daniel watched from the porch. It was the first time Emily had shown want, not joy, not excitement, but intent. She chose to be with the dog. She even started eating better when Shadow was fed. She ate too. One night, Daniel found her asleep in the barn. Shadow curled around her like a silent guard, Emily's hand resting gently against his ribs, rising and falling with each breath. Daniel didn't wake her. He sat nearby, just watching. For a moment, he almost imagined it was years ago, before the fire, before the silence. He whispered, "Thank you," not knowing if the words were meant for the dog or something bigger. In the mornings, Emily began leaving little things at Shadow's paws. A feather, a smooth stone, a red ribbon that had once been her mother's, offerings, maybe, gifts. Shadow never reacted, but he stayed. And for Emily, that was enough. It started with a sound, not loud, not alarming. But to Emily it was thunder, a truck, large, heavy, pulling into the long dirt driveway of the farmhouse. Daniel stepped outside, wiping his hands on a towel. The man getting out of the truck wore a county badge. "Afternoon," he said. "You've got a stray on your land?" Daniel frowned. "We've got a dog." "Yeah, why?" The man nodded, pulled a photo from his coat. "We believe he's from a K-9 training unit. Disappeared 6 months ago during a storm, skittish, difficult to place. We assumed he was gone." Daniel stared at the photo. It was Shadow, but not in a forest. Not with Emily. He wore a vest, a leash. His eyes were sharper, wild. "We've been tracking reports," the man said. "Sightings near these woods. If he is who we think he is, he belongs to the state. We'll need to take him in." Daniel's heart dropped. Inside, Shadow stirred. Emily stood frozen behind the screen door, eyes wide, lips parted. She'd heard everything. "You can't," she whispered, the first full sentence she'd spoken to her father in months. The officer looked at her, startled. "Young lady, we just want to make sure the dog is safe." "He's mine." Her voice was small, but steady. Shadow walked to her side, pressed against her legs. Emily dropped to her knees and wrapped her arms around his neck. "Please," she whispered, "don't take him." The officer hesitated. Daniel stepped in. "He's not dangerous. He's bonded to her. She hasn't spoken since." His voice cracked. "Since the fire." The man glanced at the child, the dog, the porch. Then exhaled. "We'll give it a few days. I'll check in again." He left a card, drove away. But the damage had been done. That night, Emily didn't eat. She didn't sleep. She sat in the barn, arms around Shadow, eyes wide open, whispering one word over and over again. "Stay, stay, stay." The days after the visit felt like waiting for a storm to break. Emily never let Shadow out of her sight. She followed him from room to room, sat beside him while he ate, slept with her hand tangled in his fur. She didn't draw, didn't hum, didn't walk the woods anymore. She was waiting, afraid that the second she turned away, he would vanish. Daniel made calls, tried to find a legal loophole, even offered to adopt the dog, file paperwork, pay a fee. But the system didn't care that Shadow had saved his daughter from silence. To them, he was property, a lost asset, a failed investment. One evening, Emily came into the kitchen. Her voice was quiet, but clear. "If they take him, I'll stop talking again." Daniel froze. She meant it. She looked into his eyes. "I know you came from somewhere else," she whispered. "And I know they want you back, but you're not theirs anymore." She rested her forehead against his. "You're mine, just like I'm yours." And in that moment, Shadow stood. Not to leave, not to run, but to walk into the woods. He paused at the edge of the trees, looked back, waited. Emily understood. She followed. For the first time in weeks, they walked into the forest together. The forest was different at night, quieter, but not empty. Emily followed Shadow through narrow paths, roots reaching like fingers, moonlight dancing between branches. They walked without speaking, without needing to. Shadow moved with purpose, not fast, but steady, like he remembered something she didn't. Eventually, they reached a place she hadn't seen before, an old, rusted fence, beyond it what looked like ruins. Half-buried concrete, a training post, bits of shredded rope, and nailed to a tree, a weathered sign. K-9 Tactical Obedience Grounds, decommissioned. Emily stepped closer. Shadow sat beside a worn post and stared at the ground. There, in the dirt, half covered by leaves, a metal tag. Emily bent down and brushed it clean. On the surface, K-9 unit, Echo 7 inches. Handler, SGT, Tyler C. Briggs. She looked at Shadow. "That was your name?" she asked softly. "Echo." He didn't move, didn't need to. She traced the letters again, Echo 7. And for a moment, she could almost see it. Him, younger, faster, running obstacle courses, barking commands, saving people, obeying orders, belonging to someone else. She sat beside him and whispered, "They called you Echo. But you didn't come back for them. You came back for me." Shadow laid down beside her, pressed his head into her lap. Emily looked up at the stars through the trees and took her first full breath in weeks. "I think you were always mine. You just had to get lost first, so I could find you." She closed her eyes, one hand resting on his chest. In that moment, Shadow became more than a dog. More than a survivor, he became her guide. Not just out of silence, but into herself. They found her tracks in the morning, small footprints, leading deep into the woods. Daniel panicked. She was gone again. No note, no sound. No warning, just gone. He called the sheriff, the forestry department, volunteers, but Emily hadn't run away. She had returned to the old K9 training ground. She sat where she and Shadow had rested the night before, waiting, like the forest itself might give her answers. But Shadow was nowhere in sight. He'd gone to hunt, or patrol, or disappear again. Emily didn't know. And for the first time since she met him, she felt alone. The woods grew darker. Clouds gathered overhead. She waited and waited. But Shadow didn't come back. Then, a howl, distant, frantic, not like before. Emily stood, turned toward the sound, started running. Branches scratched her arms. Roots caught her shoes. But she didn't stop, not until she saw it. Shadow trapped, his back leg caught in an old barbed wire snare, likely left behind by hunters. Blood soaked the leaves, his breathing shallow, his eyes wild. Emily screamed, "No, no, 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 please." She dropped to her knees, hands shaking. Shadow whined once, a soft, broken sound. Emily didn't freeze. She didn't shut down. She moved, she spoke. "It's okay, I'm going to help you. You stayed for me, I'm staying for you." She tore off her scarf, wrapped it around the wound, pressed down the bleeding like she'd seen in books. Then she did something she'd never done in her life. She screamed for help, louder than she thought she could. "He's hurt, someone help please." And for the first time in her young life, the woods screamed back, voices, footsteps. Daniel crashing through the trees, eyes wide, heart breaking. Emily, he saw the blood, the dog. His daughter pressing cloth into fur. "He saved me," she whispered. "Now I'm saving him." Shadow survived. Barely. The vet said the cut was deep, dangerously close to the artery. But Emily's quick thinking, her pressure on the wound, the scarf. It saved his life. Daniel sat beside her in the clinic waiting room. Emily's hands were still stained with dried blood, but her eyes, they weren't hollow anymore. They were fierce. The vet stepped out, tired but smiling. "He's stable, resting. He'll limp, but he'll walk again." Emily exhaled for the first time in hours. Then, quietly, "Can I see him?" They nodded. Inside, Shadow lay on a padded blanket, wrapped in bandages, eyes half closed. When he saw Emily, his tail thumped, once, twice. She dropped to her knees beside him. "Hey, boy, I told you I'd stay." She ran her fingers gently down his head, careful not to touch the wound. "You're not Echo anymore. You're mine, and I'm yours." Shadow blinked slowly. And for the first time since the fire, Emily smiled, a real smile. That night, back at the farmhouse, Daniel tucked her into bed. She looked at him and asked, "Will he sleep in my room again?" Daniel nodded. "As soon as he's strong enough." She paused, then said softly, "I wasn't afraid when he was hurt. I just knew I had to help him." Daniel leaned in, kissed her forehead. "You were brave." Emily turned toward the window. Outside, wind rustled the trees. Somewhere beneath that sky, a dog had found his person. And a little girl had found her voice. Not all at once, not in one day. But in the quiet, in the loyalty, in the staying. Shadow healed slowly. Every step was careful. Every movement watched, but he walked. Emily helped with his bandages, held the treats during his checkups. Read to him every night from a picture book she once kept buried in the back of her closet. Sometimes she even made up stories, soft little adventures about dogs and girls and stars that never went out. Daniel listened from the hallway, tears quietly soaking into his shirt collar. At school, Emily began to speak more. Simple things at first: yes, no. My dog's name is Shadow. Then came the longer ones: he's not really a dog. He's more like a lighthouse. When I was lost, he found me. Her drawings changed too. They used to be dark. Now there were trees, mountains, a little girl in a red scarf, and always beside her, a yellow-eyed German shepherd with a scar on his leg. One afternoon, Daniel brought home a wooden nameplate. He placed it above the barn door. Burned into the grain, Shadow's Place. Emily ran her fingers across the letters and whispered, "Perfect." At night, Shadow curled beside her bed, no longer as a guardian, but as family. And when she fell asleep, hand resting gently on his side, Daniel didn't feel like he'd lost his wife anymore. He felt like they'd found something new, not a replacement, not a cure, but a way forward. Emily was no longer the girl who didn't speak. She still had quiet days, still flinched at sudden noises, still slept with the hallway light on, but she spoke, she laughed. She looked people in the eye and said things like, "His name is Shadow. He doesn't need to talk to understand me. I'm not scared anymore." Daniel watched her grow in ways that had nothing to do with inches. One day, she stood in front of her class with a shoebox. Inside were three things: a photo of her mom, a sketch of the forest, and Shadow's old bandage. When her teacher asked what they meant, Emily cleared her throat and said, "This is where I come from. This is where I got lost. And this is who found me." The room was silent. Then the teacher whispered, "Thank you for being brave." Emily smiled. She didn't say she used to be afraid. She didn't need to. That night, Daniel gave her a new journal. The first page read, "For stories that are only yours." She wrote the first entry sitting on the porch, Shadow's head in her lap. Her handwriting was messy, her spelling a little off. But her words were perfect. "I thought I was broken, but I was just waiting for the right kind of love to find me." And it did, with fur and yellow eyes, and a heartbeat that never left. She looked down at Shadow. "We saved each other," she whispered. And in the stillness of that night, beneath a sky full of quiet stars, Emily finally felt whole. Some rescues don't happen in shelters, or on the side of the road, or in flashing lights and loud sirens. Some rescues happen in silence, in the stillness between heartbeats, in the quiet where pain has made a home. Emily didn't need saving the way people thought. She didn't need fixing. She needed witnessing. She needed something or someone who wouldn't flinch at her silence and wouldn't walk away from her storms. And Shadow, he wasn't just a stray, or a former K9, or a miracle with 4 legs. He was a mirror of loyalty, of presence, of what it means to stay when it matters most. This story isn't just about healing, it's about belonging. It's about the way a girl without words found her voice, not through therapy or teaching or time, but through love that asked for nothing in return, through a heartbeat that matched her own, through a dog who showed her, "You're not broken. You're just waiting for someone to stay." If this story stayed with you, if it reminded you of someone who showed up when you needed them most, or of a love that didn't speak but never left, then let it go further. Like this video if you believe in healing through quiet connection. Share it with someone who may be holding something inside. Subscribe for more true stories of second chances, resilience, and the silent heroes that walk beside us. And in the comments, tell us about your shadow, that one friend, animal or human, who didn't save you with words, but by staying, because someone out there is still hurting, still waiting for proof that love doesn't always need to shout. Sometimes it just needs to sit beside you and not leave. Let this story be the hand they didn't know they were reaching for. And remember, not all heroes speak. Some heal, some protect, some stay, and in the staying, they change everything.